everyone, my name is Wana and welcome to another edition of Culture Diaries. My guest on the show today is a very dear friend of mine and simply an artist. Her name is Adeola Olagunju. Welcome! We have to clap for ourselves. We don't have an audience here.
Yara.
Welcome. Thank you for being here.
Thank you very much for
all the way
inviting
from
me.
Germany.
There you go.
We have international people on our show. Oh my gosh. No, but seriously, first of all, I think I need to congratulate you on all the incredible things that you've been doing. All the awards, all of that stuff.
Thank you very much.
Very, very well deserved because you've been doing the work.
Thank you.
I think the first thing I want to sort of kick off with is your earlier work. And a lot of it was about like landscape photography. I think so. Two things I want to know is, first of all, why photography as your medium? And then secondly, what is this? You have an interesting relationship with space and the environment. And I want to know a bit more about that.
I mean, when I started out with photography, it was so much about my earlier curiosities. I wanted to understand my environment, and I needed to see it through a medium. I mean, I studied art. I was a graphic designer and working at the advertising agency and all. And, you know, photography became some sort of escape for me. You know, I don't have to, I mean, after the old dealing with brief and all those things, I have something else to do that I don't have pressure. I can choose to shoot whatever I want, see whatsoever I wanted. And, you know, Lagos was also pretty complicated for me because I didn't grow up here. You know,
Where did you grow up?
I mean, I grew up between Ibadan and Ilesha, so in and out. And so my life was, you know, mostly in Oyo State, Osun State, you know. And, you know, so Lagos was also, you know, pretty intense and, you know, chaotic in a way that, you know, I always wanted to, you know, escape.
Yeah.
And photography, you know, was that thing because, of course, it was handy. I don't necessarily need a studio if I can't afford one at the time. You know, all I needed was just my camera. And so I would go around and, you know, I love this old area shots. Sometimes go to 1004, you know, just take like the landscape and, you know, look at it. I wanted to see beauty, you know, because there was a whole lot going on. And you know, that was how this whole thing started for me. And then I did a bit of, you know, fashion, a bit of wedding. And at some point I felt, yeah, I wanted to do more.
You went through the grind.
Yeah, the grind.
The photography grind.
Pretty much. I wanted to do more. I didn't just know how, you know, to, and I think, you know, I would always say, like, you know, that light bulb moment, you know, happened for me with a workshop I attended. And it was this lady, Delphine Fawundu, I don't know if you've ever, she's an American photographer, of course, of Sierra Leonean descent. And then she was, you know, there was this workshop where a friend just tagged me, you know, it was for women, and it was being organized by Lagos Photo. So I said, you know, I'm going to be here. At first, you know, I had this old arrogance. I know my technique. You know, it was so much about aesthetics at the time. You know, I know what I'm doing and all these things. So, I mean, I was there like, okay, let's see what's going to happen. You know, I had that let's see what's going to happen thing. And, you know, for the first time, you know, I knew I didn't know anything by being at that space because she asked simple questions and I found myself sweating. And it was, and you know, she presented this image, painting of Sarah Batman, and asked, you know, do you know who this person is? I'm like, I don't know what this is, or, you know, but can you tell me what you see? And for the first time, I realized I wasn't seeing. And, you know, it was that thing of like, you know, I had that tension. And just someone asked me, what, you know, what do you see? And I realized, no, actually, I mean, I'm photographing, I'm shooting, and doing all stuff, but I am not seeing. And that was it. You know, it was like some sort of stab, you know, and that changed my whole perception around image making, you know, photographing, and, you know, I began to question things. I mean, I began to work from a place of leaving the camera at home and trying to see, and not just like, you know, clicking and shooting, you know. So, I mean, that was it for me. That was like the beginning of like the journey.
I mean, I feel like I have so many follow-up questions in just what you said, but so that I don't lose my train of thought, I really want to zero in on this idea of seeing. You said, I know you said that, you know, even how you worked changed in that moment, but what if you had to articulate or describe this idea of you are shooting but not seeing, and when you decide that now you're going to see, what is the difference? because I feel like a lot of people are just shooting. There are a lot of people that just shoot. But when you said this really brings something meaningful for me into the conversation about what we use the camera to do and how we see with it.
I mean, I feel like sometimes, you know, the camera sees first and we don't necessarily see. I mean, you know, I've been there myself where I'm like, oh, I didn't know I took that, which means I didn't see it. You know, the camera did the thing, you know, I clicked it, but I wasn't conscious of like, oh, this is the image. I wasn't questioning, I wasn't asking question about why is that interesting? Why is that frame interesting for me? And why am I shooting, you know, what I am? What am I saying? Or what am I trying to, you know, express, you know? And I realized, you know, there's no offense in starting somewhere. You know, the whole interest of picking up a camera is, you know, a starting point that, you know, there's the desire to, you know, pick the camera up and do something with it. So I don't necessarily have to figure everything out you know, at the beginning. But, you know, getting to that moment of saying, actually, I can do more with this was very profound for me at that time. To say, actually, I think there's another layer which, you know, I needed to access. And that was what that, you know, workshop did for me. So it placed me in a place where I became so obsessed with this idea of like, I need to see that, you know, I gradually drifted away, you know, from all the things that used to be of fancy. I stopped shooting weddings or, you know, doing fashion. It was so much about, you know, thinking, you know, getting busy with an idea and finding an expression for that space to say, bringing something intangible, making something tangible from, you know, oh, I can actually pick a concept and then, you know, expound on it and then bring that into reality through photography. And that was so, it was like magic. It was pure creation. And, you know, I began all these old, you know, staging things, creating what's not there, like, you know, messing with elements. And that was like everything for me, you know.
And this is, again, is also interesting to me because, you know, you're not from Lagos, so which makes you a foreigner.
In a way.
In a way, to the land.
Yeah.
And I always find it very interesting, people who are not from Lagos, because when their photography shows there's something different, there's something special, because it feels like it's a place that is new, or there's something fresh that they're seeing that because when you live here, the space numbs you, so you don't really see, I find. So it's when somebody else comes in, there's something they're seeing that, you know, you don't see. But you come to Lagos, you're photographing, you're doing weddings, you're doing, you know, the typical things that, the commercial stuff that we normally do. And then you now decide you're going to, you have this sort of aha moment through this workshop, and you're now seeing newer ways of constructing images or being part of making the images perform. And that is not the typical popular route to go. For you, did you have any reservations, any confusion, any anxiety that, oh, like this thing is not the popular thing, or is not what, you know, and will it make sense in the end for you? Was this something that the moment you just felt that you were like, this is it, I'm moving this way?
Well, I think I've also always created in a very self-absorbed way. That don't, I mean, I'm like, I get into the space of like, outside noise or whatever it is that's happening is none of my business. So I've always had that attitude from inception. I mean, I'm more about like, this is what I want to do. Is it honest to me? You know, I mean, there are a lot of things which I couldn't articulate, and, you know, I mean, I think my work is very slow also, you know, so I realize sometimes I'm going to make things which sometimes maybe it's too early, you know, and I also realize it's important to put myself in a place where I don't have to sit down and start explaining. You know, it's either you catch up at some point or you never, and, you know, so, but I have to stay true to what it is that really feels honest to me, you know, as an artist or a photographer, whichever medium I choose to use. But yeah, coming from a place where you're working commercially, it means you make money. And then, you know, moving into this language, which is also new for me, and I'm finding my path as I go, means like, you know, that money making part is going to, and of course in a place like Lagos, that's the challenge. You know, everybody you want to live good, you want to be able to meet up your rent, and, you know, at least have the basics of you know. But I had my design, you know, it's as though I led two lives, so to speak, you know. So I had like a I function as an artist and art director, and I did that to, pay my bills and all these things, where my energy is like focused, because I realized if I invest so much time into like, like the weddings and the fashion, I would never have time to be the artist I want to be. And I know nobody's going to be a good player in the spare time. So I needed to invest time into this thing, and I had to make sure I had some sort of thing to sustain my life. So I did that with like, being a designer and or whatnot, and, put my energy into this in such a way that I have resources to also fund my own project, because then I don't want to be subjected to like, get into this whole desperation of, survivor. And then when you're in survivor mode, you can't think, you can't reflect. So I tried not to, I try to find like a very good balance between, myself as an art director and a visual artist. Yeah.
I feel like you work hard at preserving your voice, and you work hard at keeping your vision. And I'm very interested in if that is something that's just a natural thing personality-wise, or is it something that you became or you learned along the way?
I guess it's a mix of of both, Well, I believe I'm, still learning and growing, and of course learning throughout life. But I also think, there's a bit of personality to it. And, I personally believe in, in dignity and integrity of anything. You have to, find your own standpoint and be able to die for it. And that, sometimes it's too extremist, but, you're who you are.
Okay. You fight your cause and you die for it.
So, and then, so I know I have to, I remember when I turned 30, I knew, I think I'm in this forever. And I needed to, find my own voice and also find my own strategy to realize that, okay, yeah, there are a lot of rules, but then I have to make my own rules according to who I am, my own temperament, what I can take, what I can take. So, sometimes what work for me may not work for you. And so, I have to also allow things to say, other people will do things a certain way. I will do mine, in a certain way. And I have to be able to, build the confidence to stay in that truth, to say, this is how I choose to work. I don't care if everybody, go about it this way. I have to find what works for me. So, yeah, it's like a mixture of all these things.
So, I want to talk about, let's go back to the work now.
Okay.
And I want to talk about a series of photographs, which you say that it wasn't intended as a series, which is about the oil photographs essentially.
That's like
and I think what interested me about that is it was again one of the most banal things that we see when we walk on the rainbow, and like it's all these elements coming together from the earth and oil and waste and rain. It's just so much. But it's something that has always been a part of who we are that we never particularly notice. But of course, what's even bigger for me in those images is form. So photography almost becomes painting, and it's exploring form as well, and symmetry and lines and all of these really interesting elements. And I want to know a bit more about that project for you.
Okay, so that project I titled Beautiful Decay. I didn't intend it to be a project or anything. It was just me responding to the environment. So, there's something very fascinating for me about decay, rust, and all this, murky things. Like, I'm interested in, like, what's happening, in the flesh, for instance. What does my organs, like, look like?
Yeah.
On it? So I have this all morbid fascination with certain things which you would, maybe sometimes, arouses disgust in people and all this, because who goes around photographing gutters in a place like in a place like Lagos?
Yeah.
But it was one of the things which I noticed, moving into the city, the open sewage and the dirt, the stench. I have a very strong sense of smell. Growing up, I'm that girl they call, like, I think the rats died somewhere. We're looking for it. We can't find it. And I'm like, and I'm going. It's like really. So I'm into my senses.
Yeah.
And also this is also very visual. And I'm like, I can't avoid seeing this thing every day, and I can't continually react with disgust. So it was though like I adapted to this thing, and like, oh, maybe there's something else to see. And and one day, I looked, I'm like, oh my God, this is beautiful. This the form, the shape, the texture. And so I started, of course, with my mobiles, started, making images of all these things to see it. You know, it's otherworldly, as though like like a planet of.
But is it not interesting how we
Yeah.
think we think that open sewage is perfectly normal for us?
Well, I
It's perfectly normal to us. So I'm interested. Like, I love the fact that it says it's otherworldly.
Yeah.
Please, carry on.
So I just ended up making and it was so much about like the beauty I found in this rot or this whole decay situation and then I came and I'm like, oh, this is such a beautiful decay, and that's like where the title came from, and it was so. I mean, I don't think like I have something conceptually so deep about the fact that aesthetic wise, like it's so appealing to me, and the colors that even though it's coming from or whatnot, all these old elements like working together. I just wanted to photograph and see some sort of beauty in this old dirty thing. Yeah.
That brings me to this question of aesthetics. A lot of your work also is interested in aesthetics as well. I think with both landscapes and space, conceptually, all of those kinds of things. And I think one of the conversations I've personally been having with just other friends who are artists in different mediums is the fact that a lot of the time with Black artists, no one ever thinks of us or looks at our work with an aesthetic eye. A lot of the time, it's always looking at the backstory or the content. So it's like, are we decolonizing something? Are we?
Oh yeah, you have to always like be serious.
Exactly. Are we decolonizing something? Are we uncovering something? Are we? It's always about
fighting.
It's always about are we fighting something? Are we changing something? And it's always about a lot of the time. The focus on our work is always on the struggle. And so it's very interesting for me with your work because I think it also forces you to look at aesthetics whether you like it or not. And is that something that was deliberate for you, or is that something that you found yourself interested in anyway?
Well, I mean, we're all products of our environment one way or the other. I mean, this city rubs off you. It either makes you more neurotic than you already are, or all these things, And that also influences whatever it is you do, what you create, how you see things, how you look at things. And maybe like the point of call for me might not be, deliberately like, the aesthetics. But, it's so much about like, other ways of seeing has always been like my thing to say, if I'm expected to, look at something in a portrait, why can't I twist it? What happens if I'm interested in questions of like, why does it have to be this way? What if we twist it? How does that change things? So, and in a way that maybe comes up with some sort of new aesthetics or new way of doing that same thing. And I think aesthetics is also quite important. Be it beauty, or people are attracted to light, color, and texture, and all these things. So and all these things forms, they're important as things which we require, like artists, visual people to communicate what it is that I feel like if I have to express something which is even serious or even something resisting something or fighting something, there's a way I can present it that is not so gory or harsh or that draws people in, and then when they come in or move closer to see that, there's something layered or deeper in this thing, and I think all these things are so important. If it scares people away, maybe of course there's a space for that kind of work also. I'm not going to dismiss it, but when somebody is able to if you find something attractive, then you naturally gravitate towards it.
Let's talk about Germany. You live you live in Germany now. How has that? What effect has? And you're also studying at the same time. What effect has that had on your work? On the progress of your work, or the evolution of your work, rather? Because you also now work in film, in video form. You still work in still images. You work in performance, in video. So you're constantly now really playing with forms. So what has Germany in that, what has that done for your work, in the evolutionary process of your work?
That's a very good question. I have to say, because of course when you move from a space to another, of course you have to go through this whole process of relearning yourself in a new space, because how my body performs in Lagos is not how now. I mean, I grew up here in Nigeria, so to speak. I'm like, used to seeing black humans every now and then. And one, so now I live in a space where I feel like, oh, why is everyone staring? And then I'm like, oh, I look different, So, and that also influences, how I engage with space, or how I relate to things and all of that. But yeah, I think one of the beautiful things which I think, being in Germany has done for me is the gift of silence. And I think, that's like also one of the things which I think we don't discuss enough, like, the value of silence to creatives. And I don't mean like, silence is quietness or all these things, but, being a place where you find your own stillness and for your own thoughts to run amok in your head, like, bombard you, and be going through that whole process of being able to filter. And I think that's like the most beautiful thing of like, being in that space where I can actually listen to myself and hear myself out. And, that rubs off on the things which I am enjoying. As much as like, most of my content is still from home, because home will always be home. And I'm very particular about like, also things which interest me and how I choose to work. But, the space enables me to, work with media, I have access to like, this whole power, which means I can experiment.
Yeah.
And that's what, like, my living there is also an experimentation. And so that also, influences the kind of things which I'm making now, which are, also, quite experimental.
Yeah.
But above all, that silence, it's like, really, really important to me, especially at this time of my life.
Girl, I don't blame you. And then, of course, you did win the prize at the Bamako Rencontre, the Bamako Biennale. And you won the grand prize. You won the grand prize.
Yeah.
Which is a huge deal.
Yeah, I think so.
What was that? Because you weren't even there to receive it was happening.
Yeah.
What did you expect? Did you expect it?
No, I wasn't. In all honesty.
And what was the work that was presented?
I presented a photo collage, so to speak. And also like a video installation. Two different things, which something connected this works and all. But for me, Bamako has always been that thing everyone, photographer, especially working, using photography as an art form, everyone looks forward to Bamako, because it was like the Venice of African photography. That's like the only biennial of photography in the continent, the biggest, I think it's like 52 years or so. And that, and that's huge. I looked forward to like, being shown there. And I feel like, when I got accepted to be part of the artist show, and that was already everything for me. I'm like, oh, we're going to Bamako. We're going to Bamako, we're showing at Bamako. That was like the, thing. I'm like, already. I'm like, okay, this is great. I got to do Bamako. And then I had to rush out because I had another exhibition opening, and so I wasn't around for so long. After the opening, I left, and then to be contacted to say, Adeola, you just won the grand prize, that was very validating, I have to say. And
to do that on the continent as well.
And that happened on the continent. It's there's something very beautiful about being seen and acknowledged. Especially by your own people, so to speak, in the continent of Africa, and that was so profound. Like, it took me a while to to take it in. I was like, okay, it was almost like, okay, you have to like. It felt so surreal, like really, and I think I'm really happy.
And then your work has shown in Paris as well.
Yeah, group show about Lagos and in Mexico and all. That was also a beautiful show. I'm glad to be part of all these experiences.
It's also interesting. Let's go into this idea of video as well. What is it about video that's starting to interest you?
I think, from the beginning, like, video has always interested me, but it wasn't a medium I understood. So, and I felt like to be in a place where I understand, like, that medium, I needed to understand still images. So I deliberately, stayed with, like, creating still images, working with photography for a while. But I got to a point where I needed things to move. You know, I needed things to be animated. I needed motion, you know, to, it felt like, you know, the stillness of an image was no longer communicating, or, you know, that energy that I needed to feel, you know, as an artist. So I started animating still images, you know, I still created them still, but then I made them into cinemagraphs, like, you know, some elements moving in all the season. And then, yeah, in recent times, I just felt like, I think this medium video really, you know, really interests me now.
Yeah.
And I want to, you know, explore and see where this leads me. And of course, experiential, you know, three-dimensional installation, you know, but of course, images and video being like the, so to speak, raw material.
Yeah. I mean, you know, it's really interesting, as, you know, we talked about the fact that you've moved to Germany and even access to material to be able to work in different ways. And I think a lot, and again, I had this discussion with somebody, another artist as well, and I think a lot about, you know, artists who are in Nigeria and who don't have the opportunity to move to see or experience arts in ways that, in other interesting ways, in ways that can move, and so they tend to end up doing the same thing over and over again. And what do you think? I know that you do have a workshop, you know, which you are doing in Nigeria now as well, but, you know, what do you think needs to happen? Because it always feels like sometimes you're seeing work and this work is always in development or in progress, and it doesn't evolve in the way that it should. Like, you know how the idea that you can, if you have the right resources and tools and access, you can just go 100. But a lot of the time, with a lot of young photographers here, it feels like the work is just still sitting in one dimension, and it could be so much more. And what would you have to say to people who want to give the work more movement, more things to do?
I mean, you know, to be fair, I mean, I think it's I mean, you know, the landscape is a difficult one, I have to say, for any artist, whoever, and it's complicated, really, because, you know, people are burdened by a whole lot of things, and, you know, and I feel like if you're in a space where you don't have power, that puts you in a bad shape, you know, because then, you know, I mean, it's difficult to be so efficient. I mean, you have plans of what you want to do, and then you have to, your computer is not charged, and you have to wait for, I mean, you know, so, and then this also impairs your mental health, and that also affects, like, you know, creating work, you know, sometimes, and I mean, I've seen people say, I started this, but I have not been able to continue, and, you know, it's so easy to think, oh, you should continue, you should force it, but sometimes it's not just so easy. You know, so I have to acknowledge that reality with, like, you know, people, you know, trying to work from here, that, you know, that already is as though, like, the forces are against you.
Yeah.
And then you're swimming against the tide all the time. But one way or the other, of course, we're also Nigerians in the sense that we're resilient. And, you know, I mean, we don't give up so easily. And I think, you know, there's something about, you know, the treadmill. We just have to keep working. You know, I mean, there's no... If I want to be better at something, I keep doing it. You know, I keep getting better at it, working at it, and looking at it, and, you know, having discussions, putting myself in a space where, you know, I can have conversations, because I believe in the power of, you know, dialogue and conversation. You know, it activates people. I mean, sometimes it could be something you've been thinking about, and somebody says something. You know, it could be, you know, just sitting down with you, I'm already looking, oh, this yellow is like, oh, yellow ochre, it's so beautiful. It goes into my subconscious. That rubs up on something else. You know, it might not even be, you know, it could be in like 5 years or 2 years or 2 months, you know, and all these things are so important. And I mean, it's important to, you know, see other people's work. I mean, one of the things which I also noticed, like, you know, in the landscape, you know, with, like, especially with photography or lens-based media, is like, you know, when a photographer is having an exhibition and all photographers are there, you know, and then I realized, like, you know, because I'm a photographer, it's important to see art is so broad. Go to painting shows, sculptures, you know, go to concerts, you know, theaters, like, you know, not just Nollywood, I mean, no disrespect, but, you know, it's important to see, you know, live. I mean, going to theater is like nurturing yourself, you know, going to see plays, going to, you know, doing things that suit you. You know, this was already a stressful place, and I think it's also like, you know, it's very intense to be an artist. You're living your life sensitively. You don't have the luxury to be ardent.
Because you're preaching.
you don't,
living your life sensitively.
You know, so you're touchy. I mean, you know, I mean, somebody's
everything just permeates through your skin.
You know, I mean, if someone says something, you know, you get offended easily because maybe you're thinking like, God beat him by the rain when I was pregnant, and now you're saying, I mean, telling me this crap. You know, but I mean, sometimes it's almost like difficult not to take things personally. Yeah. I mean, we don't have so much distance because work is life, life is work.
Yes.
So everything is so like personal.
We are feeling everything at like, you know, 1,000%.
You know, everything's so personal. And then, so you don't have a distance of an academic or a critic who is not maybe, you know, who don't have like personal emotional investment in your work. And so sometimes, you know, you feel like, oh, they're just too brash. You don't know what I have to go through to do this. But, you know, I mean, of course, in the brothers world, you know, I mean, there's a space for sensitivity and, you know, and all of that. But, of course, you know, there's, you know, larger scope of things. But sometimes nobody cares. So you also have to, like, grow some thick skin to have some sort of
you have to protect yourself.
Distance to say, you know, I have to listen to all this opinion, and I don't have to accept it. That's also important because we have to realize that as artists, we, you know, there's that space for agency to say, this is my gaze, and this is how I choose to see. And you know, you might not agree with it. You might not even fall into the textbook, so to speak, in the canon.
Yes.
You know, but you know, there's a space for this, and it might not be for you, but you know, good. So I think, and I mean, that takes a while to be able to have this some sort of, you know, confidence in how you do things and how you choose to do things, and stay persistent and not get drifted, you know, by a different, I mean, in the pool of opinions and all these things. But actually, you know, take all these things in. It's important to hear how your work impresses other people, and what they take from it, what they see in it, and how they engage with it, and what they see in it. And also let it go through your own filter to see what's important for me, you know, and what can I learn from this. And, you know, I mean, you know, nobody's an island. We all have to, you know, keep learning and keep listening and all of that. So, yeah.
Let's talk about Rolex.
How did you know about that?
Let's talk about Rolex, even if you want to hide it. And so you were Rolex, is it finalist / fellow, I suppose, was it?
So like, you know, the Royalist protege initiative is, you know, pairs an artist with, you know, an established and celebrated mentor for a year. And then you get to work with this person, and it's well funded, and you know, and all those things. And you know, so firstly, it was like it was a beautiful thing to be nominated, you know, to have been nominated, and much more beautiful to, you know, make it to like the final stage, which means, you know, I got to meet the mentor, and in this case, it was like Carmen wins. And you know, when you've been in a place where
wait. I like the way you just say it's Carmen Williams, as if like, oh, it's just, you know.
No, I mean,
it's just
I'm trying to like, you know, kind of like be cool right now because I'm in front of a camera.
You know, like I remember like when you told me, it was like, I was like, Carmen Williams, excuse me. So I mean, like, I know you're trying to be cool and composed. Shalaye. How did it feel like when you found out that she would be your mentor?
Yeah, you know, it was so, I mean, it was magical because I remember, I mean, like a couple of years back was when I, you know, found out about Carmen Williams.
Yeah.
And it was through a researcher who was visiting Nigeria, you know, doing like some sort of PhD research. And then we, you know, the first edition of Lagos Biennial, you know, I had this all, so to speak, photography installation at the windows. And so this lady came up to me to say, I really loved your work. Oh, do you know the works of Carmen Williams? I'm like, who's that? And then you should. Yeah, who's that? I'm like, you should definitely, you know, I love your aesthetics, and you should definitely, you know, check Carmen Williams. So when I got home, I mean, like Google, of course, Carmen Williams, and I saw this woman, you know, I mean, I could literally feel her energy, but, you know, looking at her work, you know, wow, this is, you know, started to, you know, study the work of Carmen, look, you know, read about, and it was as though, like, it felt like some sort of synchronicity, or how's that called? Because, I mean, yeah, you know, how did that happen that time, and then this opportunity came, and then, you know, it was going to be Carmen Williams. I mean, it was like, oh, I'm so looking forward to this. So when I made it to the final stage, and then I would be meeting, you know, Carmen Williams, that was so, I mean, I was both happy and anxious at the same time, like, Carmen Williams. But of course we met and it was, very informal and so, it was so beautiful. It was as though we've known each other for a while. I mean, we even went window shopping at malls, I mean, interesting things, and we had conversations that, was also um, validating and also liberating, because she took time to actually look at my work and told me things which I'm like, wow, this is great. I felt so honored, and I learned a thing or two. I mean, I remember when my most important question to her is, how do you, I mean, because you could tell Karen was such a disciplined, I mean, firm worker and all these things, and and I mean, for me, I'm like, sometimes if I feel lethargic, I mean, I can't do anything.
Yeah.
I just, so I'm like, how do you get yourself, out and, work consistently? And then she told me, my background is, very disciplined. My background does not care about what I'm feeling or how I'm feeling. I show up. And that was so important for me to hear, to say, you know what? I must learn to show up.
Yeah.
Show up at my desk, even if it's to read a few pages a day. I've done something, It doesn't matter what I'm feeling, even, I must always, every day, contribute something to myself artistically, creatively, intellectually, even if it's reading, even if it's listening to music, nurture myself. And, and that really, stuck with me. And, I was really glad to, to have that time with her, because I wouldn't have walk on the street and run into Caribbean. So, I mean, Rolex needed to make that happen at that time for me. And it was such a beautiful gift, I have to say.
I think, and you deserve it, babes. You deserve it.
Yeah.
What would what would be the non-artist related thing that she said to you that has stayed with you, non-creative related?
I mean, it depends on how you choose to look at it.
Because it's all intersex, right?
Learning to show up also cuts across
it cuts across everything. That
everything,
is true.
and so it's so lively, and so also have a very strong sense of self. I mean, and this is just by observation. She knows what she wants to do and how she wants to do it, and that's so important. That also, I mean, the way you can absorb confidence.
Yeah, I think that definitely fits with who you are. Anyway, so I can imagine how affirming that was when you are somebody who is very set in who it is that you want to be. You have your idea and non-compromising, and then I can also imagine being a Nigerian woman and what that means. That means, and how that can even sow in any seeds of doubt within your work, and maybe, am I too, too strict or too whatever, and then to meet somebody like that, I mean, who is the same as well.
It makes you feel like, what, you just stay true to yourself and be authentic.
Yes.
And that's so everything, really.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Then let's talk about your workshop as well. I mean, it's being an artist sometimes can be a very selfish endeavor.
Tell me.
Because I mean, we're constantly thinking of what we're doing and what we're doing next and how we're doing what. It's it's about us. And so even when it comes to giving back, sometimes it's a lot of work to apportion time and resources and energy to do that. But you've decided that you have this workshop. You've done it about 2-3 times now.
Well, I mean, the self-organized, some sort of workshop. This will be the second, especially for women. The one we had in March will be the second one. Yeah.
Why did you decide on doing this workshop? Why is it necessary for you?
I mean, firstly, I always have a very, so to speak, probing mind. Asking questions. And I also believe so much in my own body intelligence. Sometimes I might not be able to pick something up as fast, logically or intellectually. But then, I trust my body or my intuition, what it tells me about certain things. This doesn't make me feel comfortable. There's something wrong about it and all these things. And I felt a whole lot of things are quite wrong about how things are done, especially in the Nigerian art scene. And it's also important to realize, we have different things going on, which I believe, in the integrity of what it is. I mean, we need the gallery spaces because artists need to make money. We need art fairs. We need auctions and all these things. It's important, but it's getting monotonous, I have to say, and we're on the danger of our work as Nigerian artists, being solely for commercial purposes.
Yeah.
And that doesn't necessarily sit right with me as a person to say actually we need to grow artistically. We need, people to explore like, different media, so to speak, not just the traditional, the sculpture, the painting, and all this. What about what about new media? I mean, who's collecting that? Who's even looking at it? Because I mean, to collect something to see,
collect video here?
how do you? I mean, to collect something to see value in it. But if you don't see value in something, you cannot collect it. So and that needs to change by showing this thing, supporting this content and all these things. And for me, I realize, we need to be in a place where we can have conversations. It's very, very important. And so this workshop wasn't so much about photography, how to do this, how to do that, but also to say that something influences people who see. And also, I mean, we happen to be Africans, we happen to be Nigeria, we have history. We have colonial history where, so one way or the other, we've all inherited colonial gaze without even knowing what it is. We've inherited male gaze without even knowing what it is. Yes. I mean, we're all, even though we're women, sometimes we're misogynistic, without even knowing we are.
Yeah, our own internalized
misogyny. And then so we've always project this. And that observe of, if I, approach life in a certain way and I'm not questioning why, if I am in a place where I'm teaching people, I'm, also passing that knowledge through what I disseminate to, like, and it just felt like the thing, it's important for me to, because one way or the other, I mean, I never used to look at myself as, I have privilege. I feel like actually I've had to work for whatever it is I'm doing now, or where I am, and nothing like, has been handed down. But also, it's still a privilege to be in a place that's, you're working and it's working. It's important to note that and to realize maybe not everyone will have my own radical, or so to speak, say, this everything's driving me, I'm living, and, and just be crazy and, jump into the pool without knowing to swim, so to speak, and, surviving and drowning at the same time. Yeah. But it's important to be in a space where we can sit down, especially with women, because if you look at it, I mean, how many are we? And we can't be in a place where we're eating on each other, and where, we need to talk. And so this workshop came out of that need of, like, the things which drove me mad, which I hated and resented, and I want to swim against it. By, like, having this workshop, putting people in a dignified space, respecting, what they do, respecting what they're doing, and honoring what they see, how they see, and also, teaching people to ask questions, to be brave enough to take the risk to jump into the new territory, learn new languages. I mean, artistically, not just like, this is what is being shown, and then you keep making that kind of work, or this is what I think they want to see. Enough about what they want to see. What do you want to see? What do you want to say? And sometimes, just like I wanted to do things, but I needed somebody to activate that, and that was what Delphine's workship did for me. Ask me questions to say, what do you see? And that was it for me. So I felt like this could also be a space where people are able to, maybe find answers to whatever it is they've been, or also, a safe space for expression and dialogue about, everything, womanhood, art, life, and all those things. And so this whole workshop came out of that, and I'm very glad about, what we were able to do this year, and I'm looking forward to, next year fully, how that go, whatever I know. I don't think someone needs to pay thousands to go to art school to, I can easily, I don't have money to give anybody, but I have knowledge, and I can share that with, someone else.
Absolutely.
Well, I think, maybe I will be a papaya, whatever.
Why?
And also because, I mean, growing up, I had that so much until I became allergic to it, and I can't eat it. So maybe that reminds me of, like, balance, to say, if you abuse something, abuse is back. I listened to this guy called Blake Bassi. I think he's originally from Cameroon. Okay. And I don't understand anything he says, but of course, music is spiritual and transcendental.
Exactly.
So, and I found him from my hotel room and in New York.
Oh, wow.
Just like Spotify just suggested, I'm like, who's this? And then I listen. It just makes me feel something. If I come to Nigeria, of course I'll go for my Asha and Ineka. I mean, number one is that life is a gift, and nothing's promised. So for every time you get to be alive, you have to celebrate it, to know that you could be dead, and it has nothing to do about if you're a good person or a bad person. Life is just happening, you know. And to realize, irrespective of what, you know, life could be, we're always worthy, you know. Always. We deserve to be happy, we deserve to find joy.
Girl, you're preaching, you know, right now.
We're always worthy. And to say that, you know, we're enough, you know, because worthiness is also different from knowing that you're enough, you know, because I mean, the moment you know you're enough, and you know, it teaches some sort of self-respect, and then you respect yourself, you also respect your craft, to know that this is my life, because I am saying something which is going to shape someone somewhere, or you know, that's going to resonate with someone somewhere, is also going to influence how people look at me or perceive me, and so that all knowing that, you know, my view is important, and what I have something to say, and I must not be afraid to say it, and I must not even be afraid to fail or mess up or say all these wrongest or quote unquote shittiest things, you know. I must be able to, you know, say things. If I'm silent, I die, you know. If I'm not, I die, so I might as well speak. So now, Audre Lorde, that writer, who I watched a documentary during this quarantine thing, and it was so, and then I read this poetry about, you know, when we are without love, we're afraid love might never come again. When we are quiet, when we're afraid of speaking, you know, we're quiet, we're afraid of speaking, all these things. But, you know, and at the end I realized I must just find myself doing what I want to do, irrespective of what my anxiety is telling me, you know. I mean, I'm the person, you know, my housemates in Germany, when I arrived, say, oh, you never invite us to your gig. And my anxiety tells me that gig is going to flop. And so I need to find a place where I can hide. And you live in the house. So if you see me flop, and now I don't have any place to hide, you know. And then I can't explain that that's like, and you know, these things, it's so crazy because they feel so real. And I can't, there's no way I can make you understand that, you know, my mind is so shitty and messy at this time, and then it has nothing to do with you. So they also technically say, oh, is it that you don't like us? But, you know, it's a crazy thing when you have to deal with so much, you know, anxiety. And from now, I'm like, you know what? I'll let you make your noise and tell me how this camera is going to fall off, or I'm going to freeze in front of it, but I'll come and freeze anyway. You know, so I just, you know, I wouldn't do interview, you know, it's not, I hate sitting in front of camera. I mean, it's almost self-contradictory, you know, but I'm like, you know, I don't care. I mean, I just go ahead and do what it is I want to do now. No, I don't. Everything is as it should be. I think that can change us individually, you know, each one, you know. I mean, I tend to be sometimes a pessimist, and I try not to be so to speak, so bogus in this whole idea of how, you know, art's changing the world. I feel like an art piece as an element is, you know, it's static, it's there, you know. But if art changes me, then I have like the impetus to, you know, jump into the field and, you know, take action and in my own little way. You know, I don't think I have to be, you know, I mean, if I'm able to have like 10 people in my sphere of influence, it's something. You know, it doesn't have to be a whole nation or so. I take this whole personal responsibility with like the little that I do in my own room, my own environment. I'm conscious of like, you know, I can't be generating plastic in Nigeria because I know it's not going anywhere, it's going to dump. You know, I'm conscious of energy, power, like, you know, things we take for granted. Because, you know, I've also been, you know, to places where they don't have anything, where they have to harvest rain. I mean, the things we take for granted, and I realized, like, you know, actually we could be in lack. And so when we have access, we have to realize that, you know, we're blessed. And sometimes, you know, I mean, sometimes we seems to like focus on like everything we don't have, forgetting that we have health, and that's everything, because if you don't have that, you don't have anything. And so I have to contribute to health by not contribute to what, you know, blocks the sewage, and then we, you know, mosquitoes are everywhere, and then you get malaria and all these things. So maybe art can change me, and I can change something else, but then the whole idea of like, oh, I feel sometimes it's too, you know, I mean, feel like artists are too ambitious or too abstract, and or maybe it's too utopic for my own, from my view.
Adeola Olagunju, thank you so much for coming on Culture Diaries.
Thank you very much for having me. I mean, it's such a pleasure.
Yay. Thank you so much for tuning in on the program today. Big shout out to our guest, Adeola Olagunju, for coming in. The show is, of course, supported by the Goethe Institute. My name is Wana. This was Culture Diaries. And remember, ask